Got an interesting request this morning. Sue texted, and we're studying the Apostle Paul, writing his letters. Write a letter to my Bible class. Certainly not inspired, certainly not the Apostle Paul, but then the thought to sit down, and if I was going to write to a congregation, if I was going to write to a Bible class, like these guys did, specifically about what would I write? Would we have to have a letter like 1st and 2nd Corinthians? Or would we have more of a Philippians type letter or a Colossians letter? And so it was really interesting, and I enjoyed the task because I was let's take that just out of that. I was writing to 2 and 3-year-olds about God is God and Jesus loves you. And as far as a letter, it doesn't get any better than that when that's the one that we got from the Father himself. Denethor II, if you are not a Tolkienite, let me catch you up. Denethor II is the son of Ecthelion II, and he is the 26th steward of Gondor. The line of stewards in Tolkien's trilogy, and really it's much more than a trilogy, there's so many other books that go with it, was established in Gondor when King Eänor disappeared in battle. He left no heir that they knew of. And so these stewards are tasked with keeping the city safe, keeping its history intact, so that when the righteous king returns, they can turn the throne over. In The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, the major trilogy part that we recognize, Aragorn is that rightful heir, and he is making his way back home. Before he gets there, however, Gandalf arrives and is in a conversation with Denethor. And Denethor has divined through the Seeing Stone, the Palantir, that Gandalf's been working behind the scenes, and he's working to get the kingship transferred to Aragorn and see him crowned. Gandalf reminds him, you are a steward, and there is no shame in turning over the throne to the heir. But at that point, Denethor gets ill. He's not happy with the idea of the king returning, even though that's supposedly what they've been looking. Are you beginning to hear some things? Are you beginning to recognize how much Tolkien's drawing on the theme? He's not pleased with the idea of turning it back over to the king. He's arrogant. He does not want to give up his throne. So we transition. David, Solomon, Rehoboam, Abijah, who is also called Abijam, Asa, Jehoshaphat, Jehoram, Ahaziah, Athaliah, Queen Mother. By the way, that's the only one in that line of kings in Judah that is not of David's line. Go all the way to Zedekiah, and then what do we have? We have nothing. We have a period where the kings drop off after the fall of Jerusalem. And the priests and the elders that God has established in the Old Testament, and then we see the Pharisees and the Sadducees kind of insert themselves into that and appoint themselves. They're kind of stewards. They're waiting for the rightful king to come and take the throne, because there has always been the promise of the one. There has always been, Genesis 3, a seed promise that God is going to use the seed of the woman to destroy the serpent. And there's always been, since David, the promise that somebody's going to sit on the throne. And we, looking back, the outcome, we are looking for a spiritual king. They are looking for a physical king. But they are looking for these prophecies to be fulfilled. Prophecies that identified the when. Daniel tells us it's going to be in the time of Rome that this kingdom is established. that David's David's line is going to return to power. So we have a time frame. We have the where, that he's going to be born in Bethlehem, that he's going to ascend his throne in Jerusalem. We have the how. We have Isaiah telling us it's going to be a virgin birth. And so something miraculous is going to happen to totally blow us away and identify this individual. And we know the who, that he's a descendant of David, that he's going to be Emmanuel. As these prophecies, and this is where we are in John, as these prophecies are being fulfilled, they're not thrilled. The priests, the elders, the scribes, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, they can see the writing on the wall. They don't want to, but they're beginning to add some things together and see the picture. They're afraid. They are jealous. And the resurrection of Lazarus really becomes the seal. Because watch this progression in John chapter 11. Where did we leave off last week? By the way, I was reminded that I missed the big thing in the whole story. That when Jesus calls Lazarus from the tomb, he has to make sure he says Lazarus' name so everybody in the tomb doesn't get up and come out too. And yes, that's absolutely true. I did miss that or forget to say it. But verse 45, he's brought Lazarus out of the tomb, and the text told us when we were leaving last week, many believed in him. To us, that's a duh statement. Yeah. You bring a man out of the tomb that's been there 4 days, it's already starting to decay and stinks, and yeah, I may not understand all of it, but I'm going to think that's the guy. That's the man. Now notice John's wording though. Some, however, report back. So you have many who believe, and now I inserted the however so that we get the point. Some, obviously, whether they believed or not was irrelevant. They simply were gathering intel. They go back and report, and we can tell that it's with evil intent because of what plays out. And that's where we are today. Verse 47. The council convenes. Huddle up, guys. We got a problem. What are we doing? Look at what is going on. See the landscape. Feel the shift in momentum in Jerusalem and in Israel. What are we doing? This is a coach calling a timeout. This is a coach looking at his team and goes, how are you losing to this guy? How have you not come up with a plan to stop this? What are we doing? What are we going to do about it? What is the next step? Because we are in trouble. Why now? It's the resurrection of Lazarus. The signs are real. They can no longer deny them. They can no longer say that it is by the power of Satan. They can no longer say he cannot be a righteous man because he's doing these things on the Sabbath. He's just done something nobody in history has done or will ever do again. And the crowds that are on their side have come back and reported it. There's no denying it any longer. There are too many witnesses. And you might read to understand this better. When it says this man is performing many signs, in their mind, they're saying this man is performing too many signs for us to work around this problem. So we have to have another solution. We're no longer going to be able to redirect the thinking of the crowd. They are buying in, and we need to put a stop to it. If he keeps going, he will convince everyone. Parenthesis, he'll convince everyone except us, because we're not going to accept the evidence regardless how overwhelming it is. But he's going to convince everyone else. And what is going to happen? They're still thinking physical kingdom. They're still thinking that when somebody takes David's throne, he's going to lead a revolt against Rome, lead a revolt against the Jewish leaders who have been the stewards, and there's going to be an uprising. And if there is an uprising, the one thing that Rome has told them to do, which allows them to kind of go their way most of the time with their religion and their law, is just stay quiet. No major rebellions. If you have a little one, you better take care of it. And they can think back into their history when there have been some, quote, messiahs who've tried to lead rebellions and they had to squash it. We don't want Rome meddling in Jerusalem. They're going to roast us. We're cooked. We're dead. If this man keeps going and all of Israel follows him and a rebellion ensues, Rome is going to get involved. And we are going to lose our place. And this is where I sent you Glenn Campbell. Rhinestone Cowboy, there's been a load of compromising. They are compromising. Whatever we have to do to keep our position on the road to my horizon, my thought, where I think I need to be, but I'm going to be where the lights are shining on me. That's these guys. We're going to be where the lights shine on us, and we're going to ride out in our rhinestones. And how does Jesus describe them? They're lengthening things, and they're embroidering things, and they're bejeweling them, they're bedazzling their robes, so that everybody sees them when they stand on the corner and pray. Jesus calls them on it. We're going to be the ones in the center of this. So we cannot let Rome take that away from us. And we cannot let Rome take it away from us because of one man. Because of this guy who's building such a following. So they're huddling, and then Caiaphas, however you want to say his name, steps up. What you need to understand is when God established a high priesthood, what? We're from the line of Aaron. And then we're from the line of Eleazar, under Aaron, out of his children, very specific. And then from the line of Eleazar, very specific who? My Bible class can tell you, the line of Phinehas, because he stood up and stopped the immorality going on in Israel. When Rome takes over, however, that position becomes an appointed position. Rome puts the high priest into place. And so at this time, it is Caiaphas, and he takes the floor. He's the high priest from AD 18 to AD 36. He has a really long reign because in Rome's mind, he kind of keeps things calm. His father-in-law, Annas, had served as high priest from 6 to 15. So there's a 3-year gap in there. And even though we think of them as back-to-back high priests, what we need to understand is they are back-to-back high priests of significance who play a part in Israel's history. And the Bible refers to as who was high priest before him. Between those two, there are actually 3 insubstantial appointees. Back to back to back. 3 years where Rome's not pleased and they keep changing. Which may mean, or may help us understand that when John says that year, the high priest that year, that he's making fun of Rome because they had continued to replace them every 3 years. The detractors, if you're reading, will actually say, oh, well, John doesn't know what he's talking about. It's not on a yearly appointment thing. Duh. John kind of knows that. John is what? He's friends with the high priest. He knows how this works. John's a good Jew. John knows how this works. So he's either poking fun at Rome for how often they're flopping and flipping these high priests, or, and I kind of lean towards this idea, when he says he's high priest that year, put that in all caps. He's high priest that monumental year. At that moment when all of this is going down, that's the man. Regardless, listen to him. All his buddies, all of the Sanhedrin are huddled up having a council, And Caiaphas interrupts them and said, "You know nothing at all." Rude? Yeah, can you say rude? A lot. Come to find out, that is how they talk to each other. Josephus said they were extremely rude. It was a character flaw, and they were rude to each other. It wasn't just us, the people they didn't like. It wasn't the Pharisees. They're rude to each other. So yeah, he's being rude. He's basically telling them they're a bunch of idiots. Hush, stop your counsel and let me have the floor, because I'm the high priest. By the way, he's a Sadducee. You have no idea what you're talking about. There's no resurrection from the dead. So we don't have to worry about this. Think about this. He said, you don't know what you're talking about. Wouldn't it be better to eliminate the one and save the whole? We don't have to worry about Rome getting involved. All we have to do is cut off the head of the snake. We'll just get rid of him. Better for him to die than for us to lose our position, for us to lose our temple, for us to lose our nation, for us to lose our popularity. So as far as he's concerned, and really as far as the council is concerned at this point, there's not really a decision to be made. It's him or us. And from this moment on, we're going to take him out. Preservation over justice. Justice had nothing to do with their decision. He's an innocent man who's doing good things. They need to preserve their skin. And then John, in his wisdom and inspiration, in verses 51 and 52, give us this wow moment that we so often... Look, we got Lazarus resurrected. We got to get to the anointing in chapter 12 and a triumphal entry. We act like these verses aren't here, and we certainly act like 51 and 52 are not there. But in this section, circle this in your mind. Circle it in your Bible if you want to. It says that he had prophesied. Really quickly, history lesson. Exodus chapter 28. The garments of the priest are being established by God, and you have the breastplate that has the 12 stones that represent Israel, and then behind it is to be kept 2 stones, the Urim and the Thummim. And what it was is the priest's robe kind of folded up right there, and so there was a place to tuck them in, almost like a pocket. Mentioned in Leviticus 8, Deuteronomy 33, Ezra, Nehemiah, and it's kind of vague. And it's kind of veiled, and that's intentional, because if God had given us details of 2 stones that allowed the high priest to prophesy, what would we do with it? We would want to have those same 2 stones. We would want to prophesy. But it was limited to the high priest, and what the text indicates is he had a way of divining God's will based on those 2 stones, that he could go and put on the breastplate and the stones in his robe, and at certain times God would talk to him. Now if we detailed it, we'd find a way to abuse it. We no longer need miraculous divination to God's will, so we don't have a need to know today. But the point that's important for us is, through history, all the way starting back with Aaron, at times the high priest had the ability to get additional information from God. Sometimes it's explanation, sometimes it's prophecy. And so John actually tells us that Caiaphas received a prophecy. He was prophesying what was going to happen and the outcome of those happenings. Now, he misunderstands it. And that's often the case with the one who receives the prophecy. He sees one thing and it comes true, but he doesn't see the ramifications of it. That double prophecy idea, Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14. He sees Jesus, the one, dying for the physical nation to protect their place. John tells us, this is the wow part of it, that God means that Jesus is going to die for the spiritual nation and to gather all of those who are scattered. So when Caiaphas stands up before the court and says, here's the plan. He has to die to save us. God says, absolutely, He has to die to save you. One has to die for the many. Wow. That's so cool. That gathering of all those scattered could be Jews from the diaspora who are scattered across. It also refers to the Gentiles. You can roll in with this. John chapter 1 and verse 12, the children of God are those who believe. And so it's going to be anybody, anywhere in the world that comes to believe in Jesus. John chapter 10, that reference to the Gentiles. And so Caiaphas is actually saying, and if he'd have known, it would have broke his heart, that we're not the only ones. And that when this one dies for the many, He's going to reach out with His arms and draw all who believe in Him to Him to be the children of God. They have their roles to play. Understand, they have freedom of choice. Even though this is a prophecy, they do not have to be the ones to fulfill it. God will fulfill it. But they choose to play their role. And God uses their choices to bring about His plan. That is a huge thing to understand in Scripture. Everybody in the book, regardless how it reads, has freedom of choice, has free will, can make decisions. When they make them, God uses it in the plan. God is not forcing them. Acts chapter 2 and verse 23 describes, as Peter standing on Pentecost, the predetermined plan of God. Well, if it's the predetermined plan of God, we have no choice. No. Peter then says, you Jews, nailed Him to the cross by the hands of unlawful men. By their hands. You played your role, the Romans played their role, God played His role. And when it all gets put together, the plan of God comes about. So the fact that God has a plan does not eliminate our free will and our responsibility when we step outside of that plan. So even though Caiaphas is prophesying and God has a hand in it, it does not let him off the hook when He sends Jesus to be tried by Rome. But verse 53, He said His piece and it settles it. Hey, there's a prophecy, this man needs to die. It's our job to fulfill it. And so they leave already in their minds chanting, crucify Him. Whatever it takes to get Him out of the way. Jesus is not an idiot. He knows. So this becomes another one of those times where I have other things that I need to do. This cannot be the end. This hour is not my hour in this way. So I'm just going to slip out of the public eye for a while. I'm going to kind of step back in the shadows. I'm going to spend some time with my disciples. And the text tells us He goes to Ephraim. Josephus tells us that is a small town about 4 miles northeast of Bethany. So that's why in chapter 12, it's real easy for us to see Him back in Bethany with Mary and Martha and Lazarus. So He's got He's got some privacy, but He also has His friends close by. And He can work with the disciples and take care of some last minute things, because when He comes back to town for the feast and we see the triumphal entry, it is all going to go so fast and so much going on that this is really one of the last couple of times that He just has with these guys. So He's out there kind of in the shadows for a little bit, but everybody else has started arriving for the feast. And verses 55 through 57 says everyone on both sides is looking for Him. The crowd, the ones who see Him as a righteous man, is He really going to skip the feast? We're all supposed to be here. We're all supposed to be in town. Is He going to skip it? And the rulers, if you skip all the way down to the end, have already sent out the message that, hey, you guys are our eyes and ears. You see Him, you hear Him, you find out where He's at, bring Him to us. Let us know. So everybody is looking for Him. This is Passover number 3 in the Gospel of John. That's important. This is the third time we've seen Jesus go to Jerusalem for Passover. It's important because it gives us a timeline. And it allows us to correct the calendar that missed a couple of things that has us in our minds having Jesus born in 0 and resetting our calendar to AD. Here's how we do that. Passover number 1 in the Gospel of John, chapter 2, verse 20, takes place 46 years after Herod built the temple. We can nail down when Herod finished the temple. So that first Passover takes place in AD 28. How old is Jesus when he comes on the scene in AD 28? He's about 30 years old. So no 0 year. So we're back in BC. Jesus is born, by the way, for you to put on your calendar if you want to remember it, in either 3 or 4 BC. And John just a little bit before him. Well, if that one takes place in 28, and we have 3, so 29, this is AD 30. Jesus dies in AD 30. The church is established in AD 30. Okay, so that's the importance of 3 Passovers. What's important in this text, though, is Jews came early to purify. Numbers 19 and verse 11, if you encountered a dead body on the way to Jerusalem on accident, or mom and daddy died right before you left for Passover, you had 7 days that you were unclean. So leave early, and Josephus tells us they get there a week early so that you can kind of hide in Jerusalem and not encounter a dead body. Not encounter somebody with leprosy so that you're unclean. And that's important because Numbers chapter 9 and verse 11, if they are unclean on Passover, the only way they get to celebrate it is they have to wait another month, and they can celebrate it on the 14th in the 2nd month. Well, you miss it then, there's no provision for you to miss it twice. So they want to be a part of this huge event. And so they come early and kind of hibernate to stay clean so they can celebrate the Passover. All right, what are we taking out of this? You know, we've been looking for Jesus traits. We've been looking for moments that we see something going on that changes our lives and changes the way we live. Number 1, when Jesus starts taking things and making them His, somebody's going to get jealous. Satan's going to get jealous. The world is going to get jealous. Sometimes family gets jealous. Think about it. Jesus is taking what these people see as their disciples and about to take their power, and they're jealous. Well, Jesus takes us out of Satan's camp and puts us in His camp. Who's Satan coming after? He's coming after me. He's jealous. He wants me back. When Jesus starts taking certain sins out of our lives that maybe affect the relationships we have, we don't do the same things we always did. We don't go the same places we always went. We don't hang out with the same people we always hung out with. What happens? What changed? Why don't you come around anymore? Why don't you do these things? There's some jealousy there. There's some questions being asked, and there is Satan trying to pull us back that other. When Jesus starts changing things, people will notice. And it will change the way they look at us and interact with us. Number 2, and I said it's the wow moment in the text, one did have to die to save the many. There's no other way. The wages of sin is death. Somebody has to die to pay the debt. That someone, based on God's own law, has to be absolutely perfect. Represented in that perfect lamb that was to be slaughtered for Passover. Or anything else that they brought to put on the altar to Him. He said, don't give me the broken. Don't give me the maimed. Bring me the best. So one perfect sacrifice at some point in history had to die to save us. That's the one. He's the only one that fulfills all the requirements. He's the only one that's God in the flesh. He's the only one that's sinless. He's the only one born of a virgin in Bethlehem, crowned in Jerusalem when the church is established, and on and on and on. Back to that Lord's Supper. We remember all the horrible things he went through, but we also remember the why. He had to die to save me. The only way that blood comes in contact with my life and cleanses me is through obedience to the gospel. It is through burial in a watery grave where I contact that blood, and then I am raised to walk in newness of life. He has already died to save you. Have you died to do your part in that salvation process? If not, if you need to obey the gospel this morning, please do not hesitate. The one died to save the many and to bring us all into one family. If you're a child of God already, and you see the jealousy in Satan, you see the jealousy somewhere else, and you feel the pull, and you need encouragement, you need strength, you need help to fight it, please let us know that as well as we stand and sing.